Welcome to the Rockstar Principles Podcast, coming straight to you from Rock and Roll, USA, covering the latest and greatest in educational leadership trends, news, and awesomeness for principals all over the world. Now, here are your hosts, the boss, John Ross, and the doctor of Proctors, Nick Indeglio.
All right, now we're back, and we're ready to get into the main act.
Back, everybody!
We got some Rockstar Principal podcasting taking place, and tonight for the main act, we're going to be talking about PVAAS results. Just last week in the state of Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania value-added scores from the most recent round of PSSA testing have come out, and John's going to give you first just a little description of what PVAAS is, so that way you'll understand what the heck we're talking about for the next 10 minutes or so.
All right, thanks, Nick. Well, if you're from Pennsylvania, I'm sure you're well aware of what these PSSAs are and what PVAAS stands for, but let me give you just a quick rundown in case you're not. PSSAs, that's our state testing, our assessments that we do every spring. I'm sure every state has something similar, probably different initials, but similar kind of testing that you do to see where your kids rank among others in the state. Well, PVAAS is a statistical analysis. It actually stands for Pennsylvania Value-Added Assessment System. And it's an analysis, as I said, of the Pennsylvania state assessment data. And it gives districts and schools growth data to add to their achievement data. So in a sense, you get your PSSA report that just gives you a flat apples to oranges comparison of year to year. The simplest way to explain PVAAS, it's comparing apples to apples. You're actually looking at the individual students and looking at their growth from year after year. Something that we in education have been asking for quite some time, and I think Pennsylvania has done a really good job with providing us with this information to really help us decide whether or not we're getting a year's worth of growth, which is really what you're looking for if you live in Pennsylvania, and even in great scenarios, more than a year's worth of growth.
Optimally, yeah, absolutely. The PVAAS data also adds to that apples and oranges information like John's talking about here, because you take your PSSA data and it's a different cohort every year. So 7th grade scores one year are different from the 7th grade scores the following year, different group of kids. But what that information does give you year to year is subgroup information as well. So what the PSSAs are great for is to see each year how all of our subgroups are performing. Special education, economically disadvantaged, all the ethnic groups, you name it, we can look at it. But what we're really looking to see is, hey man, are the kids growing throughout the course of the years? Right now, both our middle schools run 6th through 8th grade. So what we need for a PVAAS perspective is 3 data points, and then they can actually develop trend lines to see where our kids are headed. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes along with this. We're not going to get into the crazy nuts and bolts of how these equations are derived and how they come up with the information. What we're going to talk about tonight is the scores we just got in on our PVAAS, and basically, what do principals talk about? Like this is the real deal when you get to sit down with your colleagues, which doesn't happen frequently enough.
An insider scoop, which is what everyone wants, of what principals are spending their time talking about. I know how much everyone in my staff loves to hear about data.
Especially with the awesome PowerPoints we put together.
Oh, my goodness. They just can't get enough. They frequently contact me over the weekend. I'll probably get a couple of text messages while we're sitting here of people asking me about data, and I'm sure they can't wait to get their hands on all of this PVAAS information. I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek there, but quite honestly, we're very fortunate in that we work in a district that I think is really on top of the ball when it comes to using student performance data. We've been doing so for a number of years, and I think our teachers have really embraced the idea, somewhat reluctantly by some of them, but even those folks have gotten a chance to see the benefits of using this data to really inform the instruction and help pursue excellence when it comes to our kids, which is really what we all want.
And from a district perspective, I agree 100% with that. But, like we said before, we're not going to hide from the hard issues during our podcasting hours together. And I'm going to come right out and say it. Right now, the state of Pennsylvania is a mess in terms of assessment. We're switching from what was called basically a system of punishment to a large degree. You either made AYP or you didn't make AYP. That entire system has been blown out of the water this year, and now we're going to be assessed on the new school performance profile, which basically are a ton of different criteria, and they're going to use those criteria to come up with a score and then rank all the districts and the schools in the state of Pennsylvania. So the designations are pretty much gone now. So if your school was on school improvement or warning or whatever it was last year, the game has now changed, and they're trying. State of PA is trying to keep up with the Common Core and the federal government right now, but man, it seems like every other day the laws are changing, the rules are changing.
And there was another word that I don't think I heard you say there, Dr. Indeglio, and that's the keystones. We in addition to having our annual testing for all students, grades 3 to 9. And it used to be grade 11 as well. Our state has gone to a model of having assessments that will be used for kids in order to get a diploma that they'll have to pass, and that's the Keystone exams. Kids who are currently ninth graders, and I only know this because I have a child who's a ninth grader. Well, that's not the only reason I know, but it makes it easy to remember.
Because you know everything.
Yeah. But our current ninth graders in Pennsylvania will have to pass an Algebra 1 and a Literature Keystone exam. Mm-hmm. And then I think it's the class behind them, the current 8th graders, that they're adding biology to that as well.
Correct.
And I think it's the current 7th graders that they're going to add English Comp to that. So the current 7th graders, by the time they graduate, will have passed 4 different standardized tests. And it's basically sink or swim.
Mm-hmm. And the plan, let's not forget civics and government. I think that's coming in 2020, which would round out the...
even further, right.
Yeah, but that's way down the line.
Yeah, maybe we'll spend some time talking about Keystones a little bit later, but our main goal tonight was PVAAS. Again, trying to get us back on track here.
All right, so, John, why don't you... this is us. We're driving to work. For those of you who don't know, which is probably everyone listening, John and I actually live around the block from each other. We like each other so much, we just had to be as close as possible. So a lot of times we'll carpool in the morning, save a little money on gas, and this is one of the usual conversations we'll have. We'll talk data. So hey, we just took a look this morning at our PVAAS data. Tell me what you saw in there, John.
Well, let me do something first, Nick, if I can, in the rock star fashion here. I'm going to go off the script a little bit. If folks are really interested and are listening to this, you can either Google PVAAS, PVAAS, and you'll get the main site for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but it's actually PVAAS, PVAAS.sas.com is the main website. And they added something, I think it was a year or two ago. They actually have a public site. Prior to this, you had to have a password in order to see any data. You had to have a username and password. And while there's still a portion of the site where that exists, PVAAS now has a public site. I'm not sure how many states do this, but if you go to that main website and you click on View the Public Site, you'll see there's a number of different options on here. And one of the things you can actually do is search your child's school. So if you live in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and go to the site and click on School Search, you can actually find out what the recent PVAAS scores are for your child. So here I go. I'm searching Lionville Middle School, which none of you can see. And I can click on either math or reading PVAAS results. So we'll start with math, grades 4 to 8. And what will come up is a quick little summary of Lionville Middle School in the Downingtown Area School District, how we did in terms of PVAAS and in terms of growth. But even more interesting, it gives some comparison schools. You can restrict your search. Initially, it compares us to every other middle school in Pennsylvania, but you can narrow your search even more to common, similar schools. So when I click on this and I see all the schools in Pennsylvania, why, look at that. School number 3 in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Haverford Middle School. Good friend of mine, Dan Horan, happens to be the principal of Haverford Middle School. I'm going to have to give a little shout out to Mr. Horan there.
Dan Horan, is he on Twitter?
I don't think he is active on Twitter, but I'm going to have to make sure we change that because in his first year as principal in Haverford Middle School, he's a rock star. He's an absolute rock star, and it fits the model of rock star principal, although he's probably much too modest to admit it. But it's really neat because you can compare all the middle schools in the Commonwealth. But
is that a ranked comparison, or
it is? And
how are they judging score? What are they basing that on?
Well, the growth measure. In other words, the average growth index is this little mathematical if you're not in it, which I am, I'm into this sort of stuff, but people that aren't as interested in it, basically, if you think about every child and how much growth, you want your child to, a minimum. Every parent wants their child to have at least 1 year's worth of growth from the time they start school in the beginning of a particular grade till the end. And hey, wouldn't it be great if they had more than a year's worth of growth? Wouldn't it be wonderful if some kids, in some instances, especially if they're lagging behind, can get more than a year? So the state takes the average growth across the school and ranks schools that way. Schools like Haverford Middle School are right up there. But we're up there as well. Lionville Middle School's up there, and I'm sure Downingtown Middle School's up there. We do pretty well. We live in an outstanding community. I've said it a number of times. We're very, very fortunate to be principals and to work in the district where we work because we've both seen the other side, and we know that there's instances of districts that aren't in as good a shape, either financially or in terms of the economics of the families in the community. So we're very, very lucky to work in Downingtown and to have the schools that we have and the kids that we have. And we did well. We have growth across the board we're seeing as I look at my school results. And what more could a principal ask for, Nick, than to be able to say that we're achieving growth for all of our students?
But before you get into that, there, you made a great point in terms of appreciating the community we're in, and let's get some feedback from the Rockstar principals listening. You guys want to talk about what I think is an interesting topic, what I think is a relevant topic, and that is stability versus moving around a bit. It's not the greatest thing in the world that I've been in a multitude of districts, but I can say that I've seen a lot of different populations of kids, a lot of different groups of teachers,
sure.
And I think it makes me appreciate my lot in life in Downingtown a lot more. I appreciate how well behaved our kids are, how wonderful the teachers are, how great the parents in our community are, because it's not like that, everywhere in other places. And I wonder sometimes, especially for teachers, because you tend to, once you're in a teaching role, you're not looking to switch schools. You want to become established. You want to be part of that school community there. And do we lose perspective, I wonder? Do teachers sometimes, it's the forest through the trees, do you maybe not appreciate, what's there for you? And sometimes we just lose sight of that.
And that could probably be said about a lot of different things. For instance, I know teachers often feel that principals forget what it was like to be in the classroom. I know principals often feel that superintendents forget what it was like to be a building principal. Heck, students often feel that the adults forget what it was like to be a student.
Absolutely.
So, it's all relative, I think, for everybody. And I'm sure those of us that are, again, lucky to be in the position we are, to really gain an appreciation when you hear the stories and when you talk to our colleagues that are in much, much more difficult situations. And those are, quite honestly, the true rock stars of education, the people that are able to day in and day out walk into schools where, they're buying 90% of the supplies that the kids have out of their own pocket and
dealing with an attendance rate of 10% on the majority of their
difficulty
population.
Getting parents to show up for things, getting parents to take interest in their child's education. Our hat goes off and our heart goes out to people in those situations. This is a dedication going out just to you folks, and you know who you are. We really do appreciate the work that you're doing, and it goes largely unrecognized, I know.
Hey, kudos, though, man. We'd give you front row tickets to the Rockstar podcast any day.
Darn right. Absolutely. We'll have to, at some point, I'm sure, get some of our urban colleagues to join us on the podcast. I think we can use some of the connections we have maybe to do that.
Absolutely. We're your groupies because you're the ones doing the hard work there. Interestingly, and we're off the rails here in terms of what we're supposed to be talking about.
True rock stars, brother.
Just talking about forgetting what it's like being in the classroom. One of the interesting things Downingtown does is that it requires all their Act 93 administrators to do 3 days of substituting each year in the classroom. Personally, I love it. Love getting in there, try to do some different subjects, each time, maybe chaperone a field trip here or there. But you were talking about an article you read the other day, and something you were going to try this Monday. I think it was called the No
Wow,
the no Office Day.
You're really putting me in there. We did not rehearse this, folks. As polished as this may sound, this is completely off the rails now, unrehearsed.
Tell me, what's the
I'm
no
doing a
office
solo
day?
here, Rockstar. You got me. I'm putting the spotlights on me, and I got the guitar, and you're asking me to perform a solo here.
Yeah, now listen, this guy's a 2009 nationally distinguished principal. He should be able to go off the rails, so it should be improv all the time.
Well, as I've said to a couple of folks who have brought that up recently, 2009 was that's ancient history. We're going to have later on one of our podcasts a 14 national distinguished principals.
Yeah, Dr.
We're looking
Dina.
into the future. But no, Nick, you did mention that, and I am doing it this Monday. There was an ASCD brief that came out about a week or so ago. Do yourself a favor if you're on Twitter. Just look up the hashtag No Office Day, all one word, No Office Day.
And that's at ASCD.
Yeah, ASCD. Once again, shout outs to ASCD. This is a dedication for you. But yeah, there's a gentleman who's a principal, and his name escapes me because, again, my friend, you're catching me off guard. But he's a principal who came up with this idea of blocking out an entire day to be in the classroom. And I'm going to give that a shot this Monday, which will be, what is this Monday? 21, 22, 23, September 23rd. So we'll see in future episodes of the Rockstar podcast just how that went. I'll check back in later on how that went. But I'm looking forward to spending the day.
No email? No email?
Nothing. I'm going to go in first thing in the morning and check in with everybody, make sure everything's good. And then I'm going to turn my cell phone off, going to close the laptop, and just going to go out into the hallways and pick a classroom. I've got a couple ideas in mind. I may actually shadow one individual child for the day, or I might just jump from room to room and just spend the day as a student would, and try to get to know more about what's going on in my classrooms and more about what's going on in the lives of my students. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'd be happy to share the results of that at a later podcast.
Yeah, maybe episode 2 we can talk about that. Also, that's Larry Fliegelman. He was the author of that article. See? Larry Fliegelman.
All over that. So, my good man, back to PVAAS results. As we were saying, we use this information not much differently than I'm sure what any of our colleagues across the country use their data to try to make decisions about where strengths lie, where the weaknesses are, where the gaps are that need to be addressed. And PVAAS is just another way for us to find out more about specific kids, and that's what I like about it. You can look at student scores over a period of years and see where, according to the growth model, they should be. And as long as their lines are parallel or on top of one another, the line where the state thinks they should be and their actual line, that means they're showing the growth they're supposed to show. And when they don't, it gives you an opportunity to try to find out where they've gone wrong and try to determine what could have led to that decrease in performance in specific years.
So let's talk about where it goes wrong. And I'm going to jump over to Downingtown Middle School for just a moment here. Looking at the main page of our results, I'm extremely proud of this PVAAS data. We put a concerted effort last year, thanks to our assistant principal, Rob Farina, brought the idea of doing targeted bubble groups. Did you ever hear that term before?
Yes, I have heard that term before, Dr. Nick. I think I have an idea of where Rob Farina got that term from, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, we can touch on that later. But basically, the idea behind bubble groups, and this is just putting a name to something that, again, we know a lot of you do. We took our kids who were essentially plus or minus between 100 and 200 points of proficiency on the various PSSA tests, primarily in math and reading. And we targeted those groups on each of our middle school teams just to give them a little extra. Maybe they need a little bit of work on some additional vocabulary to kind of get them over the hump there. Maybe it's math reasoning, and we just had to do a little conceptual work with graphic organizers. But the idea was just to give a little bit of extra attention to those kids, and would we see growth in those areas? So when first thing I looked at when I pulled up our PVAAS data was our proficient group and our basic group. In Pennsylvania, we go from below basic to proficient and advanced. And I'm looking at bright blue bubbles, which means that we showed significant growth. We exceeded the benchmark for growth in those areas. So whereas the general PSSA data really didn't show that, it's hard to track what kind of a difference it made unless you're looking just at raw scores. The overall trend for the PVAAS data showed us that we did make it there. But then I was drawn right away to the advanced category, and in 4 different categories, our 6th grade reading and math, our 7th grade reading, and our 8th grade math. In the advanced category, these are kids who are scoring advanced. They're not making growth. There's, in fact, significant evidence that they didn't make as much growth as they should have. And you start asking yourself questions. It's easy to make excuses and say, maybe these kids have topped out. They're already advanced. How can they get any higher? But then I look over at your spreadsheet over there, and I notice that you guys did make growth in that category. So is it that something you're doing that we're not doing? Is it the difference in the demographics of the kids? Is it something different the teachers are doing? Is it something from the leadership? The big question on my mind right now is, why are we making growth at Downingtown Middle School in every category below basic, and proficient, but our advanced kids aren't growing? Why is that?
Well, I think that's another great question to put out there maybe to anybody who might be listening. What can you do for advanced kids to make sure that they're still being not only in the classroom challenged? I know there's several bodies of research about that, but how do they show a year's worth of growth if they're already advanced? That's really putting the pressure on differentiation in the classroom and on the school as a whole. And we had this conversation with my staff last year, and I don't know that we ever really came up with any answers to it. We have it in our 6th grade advanced group that didn't demonstrate the growth that they need to demonstrate, or other advanced groups did. But I'm starting to hear yawns, Nick. And I think maybe, if we spend too much time, that is difficult enough to get people pumped up about.
That's true.
Especially when we don't have anything to show them to keep them interested. But the bottom line here is, again, PVAAS, very, very interesting way of looking at the growth, a way that Pennsylvania does it, and something that I would encourage our friends from outside of Pennsylvania to maybe take a look at it, compare it to what you're doing, tweet us at Rockstar Principals, and let us know what you think. Let us know what you're doing. Anybody has ideas of what to do with those advanced kids, that would be something that we'd love to hear about.
Maybe a future topic as well as we kind of move down the line here. You mentioned differentiation. In a previous life, I spent a whole year basically in-servicing an entire district on differentiated instruction. I spent a year myself basically, learning from the ninja master, Caroline Tomlinson, content, process, product, flexible grouping, you name it. We taught it, and, to a large degree, I got to tell you, teachers, they don't buy in as much. What I found worked the best was the easy, simple solution strategies to jump in there. So is the answer as simple as differentiation? I don't think it is. I think it's a lot. It goes deeper, and I don't know where that answer is. So
as everybody knows, a lot of the attention has gone to the lower performing groups. Your below basic groups. I did a lot of work in my prior education career with RtII, Response to Instruction and Intervention. That's something that Pennsylvania, again, I think has been on the forefront and cutting edge with, and that really helped. In the district where I worked previously, it really helped us address the kids that were on the lower end of the performance spectrum. But there's got to be something out there. I keep saying there's got to be something out there that will help us take those kids that are already high performing and help them to grow at the same rate.
Take it to the next level!
You got it, brother.
Hey, well, guess what? It's time for another commercial break. So we're going to see you on the flip side, folks. And we're still working on an outro. We need like a tagline to end this thing with. So at RCKSTR Principal, tweet us your ideas. How should we go to commercial break?
And now a word from our fake sponsors. But we'd really love if they were our real sponsors. Seriously, we would love it.
What is that you're reading there, John?
Oh, funny you should ask, Nick. This is Education Week.
Wow, that is an extremely large magazine.
It's not a magazine, Nick. It's a newspaper.
Really?
It's the only newspaper really worth buying for anything at all. Everything else you can find out online. And while Ed Week does have an outstanding website, I prefer to hold this gigantic newspaper in my hands so I can keep up with everything that's going on in education. The latest news, politics, sports, everything education related.
So that's the magazine I see Dr. Bruton bring into the bathroom with him, my assistant principal, about 3 times a day.
That's not the same one I'm holding in my hands, thank goodness. But yes, that's probably the same one that he reads.
Well, maybe I'll get my own copy because I've never touched the one in the bathroom.
Education Week, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure that's a fine commercial that they will be very excited to get us.
Oh, boy. Okay. All right, welcome back to the Rockstar Principals podcast. We've touch on some pretty heavy issues here, so we're going to wrap things up with a final segment we like to call Pop Culture. And this week, we're going to talk about Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. You might be wondering why we're going to talk about Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. I'm going to tell you, I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I had no idea there was such a thing as Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. As soon as I heard those words, I got angry, I got upset. I didn't really do my homework. All I saw was a little bit of the video on Netflix on the iPad that my daughters were watching, and I saw what I considered to be sacrilege. Someone was taking Mr. Rogers and bastardizing it, turning it into something it's not supposed to be. I can't even tell you how angry I was. But then I slowed things down. I did my homework, and I actually found out that one of the writers and directors and producers who worked on the original Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, who was very close to Fred and who Fred actually kind of passed the mantle to in carrying on his work, was the force behind Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. So I gave it a chance. I actually sat down with my kids and watched some episodes and found out that it really does kind of get to the heart of what Mr. Rogers was all about, just in a more contemporary CGI way. So we wanted to open this segment with me and John kind of remembering Fred Rogers from our youth. So, John, were you a Mr. Rogers fan?
I would say that I was probably a quiet Mr. Rogers fan. As much as I, at the time, probably would have said that I didn't like Mr. Rogers, I did watch. How could you not? How could you not be enthralled with the way that Mr. Rogers was able to just not only share knowledge, but just have real conversations with you, the way that he spoke to you when you would watch. And I know as we got older, even by older, 7, 8, 9 years old, we probably mocked it to a certain extent, the way that he spoke and the way that the topics that he covered. But certainly a man who impacted so many lives and had such a tremendous influence on education. I think that in public education, as we began to see that television wasn't always bad, and I think certainly Fred Rogers and Sesame Street to a certain extent as well, maybe the forefathers of the digital age that we have now, with things as much as flipped classrooms and social media and iPads in the classroom. You think back to when things like that just didn't exist in classrooms. The most you could get was maybe a film strip or a movie on the old projectors if you were lucky.
Yeah, when we were in elementary school, and you'd have to go down to the AV room, and
right.
you'd have to watch those film strips. And
those days are long gone, thank goodness.
But you think about the Mr. Rogers show itself, and how they would weekly take trips to different places, and they'd bring a camera and they'd show you the kids the footage, and then it was all tied around that central theme. They traveled to the land of make believe. I was a huge Mr. Rogers fan. I definitely wasn't a quiet fan. My mom still tells stories about how I used to take a tape recorder to the TV, and I would tape record the theme song every day so I could sing along and put the sweater on, take the sweater off.
There's a concept for you. Having a tape recorder, let's review. Okay?
Uh-huh.
We've gone from talking about PVAAS and data, and then I just mentioned social media and iPads, all the way back to tape recorders. I wonder how many of our listeners actually know what those are.
With cassettes.
With a cassette. And actually, the only way you could record things, you couldn't plug something into the television to get the audio. No, you had to put your tape recorder on its side
close to the
press
speaker.
the play and record button at the same time as you held it up to the TV to record things. That was the only way you could get anything off of TV or the radio to be able to recall those songs whenever you wanted to. But yeah, it's certainly, looking back, I can see how it's influenced children's television today. And as I look at things like having not watched Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, but I would liken it because my children are a little bit older. Mm-hmm. But I think about things like Blue's Clues. Some of the shows my kids watched when they were younger, much more interactive. Actually, looking through the camera at the children and interacting with the kids. In such a meaningful way.
And it's the concept of wait time that goes with it. The Blue's Clues especially followed the not the Sesame Street model, but the Fred Rogers model, and a lot of the studies that they've done, the precursor to the research around wait time, it came from, Mr. Rogers, who gave kids a chance to think and to process and to do all that. If you haven't seen it, you can go on YouTube and you can find the clip. Just Google or YouTube Fred Rogers and 9/11. And his speech to the kids following 9/11 was probably the most poignant of any speech that took place afterwards.
Yeah, I would agree.
Pretty incredible stuff there. It's funny anyway. My kids, 4 and 5 years old, don't know who Fred Rogers is. They only know Daniel Tiger. And so I told my daughter Tootie to come on over, and I found some old clips of Mr. Rogers on TV, and within 5 seconds, she didn't want to see it until the music started. And the songs on Daniel Tiger and Mr. Rogers are pretty much the same, the opening intro and everything. And all of a sudden, she was mesmerized. And she's on YouTube herself now watching the old, Mr. Rogers clip. So
make sure that's the clip she's watching while she's on there.
I'm pretty sure it is. We've come across some weird things, but it's pretty neat to pass. It's a generational thing to me. I feel like I've been able to pass Mr. Rogers on to them. And if it wasn't for the bridge of, the new Daniel Tiger, we wouldn't be there. So, Daniel Tiger at PBS Kids on Twitter, at PBS Parents, and at Daniel Tiger TV. If you're a principal and you're a parent and you've got young kids and you remember Mr. Rogers, check it out. Ugga Mugga.
I want to thank you so much for joining us. Take us out, Dr. Nick.
For the boss, John Ross, and the Doctor of Proctors, Nick Indeglio, we hope your week is full of twisted steel and school appeal.
Thank you. Good night.